Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. California police arrest a man at a security checkpoint near Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's rally after he was found in possession of loaded firearms. Beijing warns Taiwan with a new round of war games around the island, drawing condemnation from the United States. Taipei detects a record 125 Chinese aircraft. European Union imposes sanctions on prominent Iranian officials and entities, including 3 airlines, in response to Tehran's transfer of missiles and drones to Russia for use against Ukraine. Israeli military widens raids into the northern Gaza Strip, with tanks pounding some districts, including a food distribution center, causing casualties among women and children. And 3 US-based academics win the 2024 Nobel Economics Prize for research that explores the aftermath of colonization to understand global inequality, especially in countries dogged by corruption and dictatorship. Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. It looks like all is not going well for Kenya. Along with public anger against the high cost of living and political turmoil within the William Ruto government, the East African country is also facing opposition against its first nuclear power plant. Dozens of residents, activists and environmentalists rallied in Kenya's Kilifi against the proposal to build the country's first nuclear power plant near the coastal town. The controversial plant in the Kilifi County is located around 500 kilometers from the capital, Nairobi. This county is Kenya's top coastal tourist hub. It is renowned for its pristine sandy beaches and is one of the best spots for boating and snorkeling around coral reefs. The county is also popular for bird watching in the Arabuko-Sokoke forest, a significant natural habitat for the conservation of rare and endangered species, which is also on the tentative list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The Kenyan government says the construction of the major plant will begin in 2027, but local residents are up in arms against it. They don't want the project to go through, and here's why. Kenyans have been worried about the fact that the government's plan, which was first proposed last year, would have several negative impacts on local people and the environment. Human rights groups and environmentalists have led demonstrations in Kilifi and have even handed the county governor a petition opposing the construction of the plant. The protesters raised anti-nuclear slogans. Many of them also carried placards that read, "Sitaki nuclear," Swahili for "I don't want nuclear." The protesters believe the negative effects of building the plant outweigh the positive ones.
We say that this project has a lot of negative effects. There will be malformed children born out of this place. Fish will die, and our forest Arabuko-Sokoke, which is known to harbor birds from abroad, will be lost, and the nuclear plant will cause us more harm than the benefits.
Our main source of income here is ecotourism. We depend on the environment. We host the only East African coastal forests. We host the Watamu Marine Park. We host the largest mangrove plantation in Kenya. We do not want nuclear to come and mess up our ecosystem.
The protesters have also put up demands. They want the government to involve and inform the locals of decisions regarding the nuclear plant. Secondly, they want the government to not proceed with fixing any site for the plant before laws and adequate safeguards are in place. Thirdly, the residents are seeking more scrutiny of the project. They want to know as to how the radioactive waste would be managed, among other things from the plant. Some activists have also filed petitions and lawsuits raising concerns over risks the plant might have to tourism in the event of a nuclear spill. The Kenya Anti-Nuclear Alliance has also urged the government to focus more on renewable energy sources instead.
100 billion can generate more than 2,000 megawatts. Why are we using it to generate only 1,000 for only 60 years and then it's finished? While we have renewables that can last a lifetime for generations to come. We are here to oppose. We do not want the Kilifi County government to be loaded with the burden of dealing with nuclear waste.
The government says the plant is crucial. It is expected to generate 1,000 megawatts of power when it begins its operations. The cost of construction of the plant is expected to be at 500 billion Kenyan shillings, or $3.8 billion. The project is expected to begin in 2027 and be completed by the year 2034. The government says the project is a part of Kenya's long-term strategy to reduce its reliance on hydroelectric and fossil fuel energy sources. But how does the William Ruto government plan to deal with the opposition to the plant? Will it engage with the protesters? Well, for now, they have been trying to ease their concerns with promises. The government says that the plant not just aims to increase Kenya's energy capacity and to reduce carbon emissions, but will also create new job opportunities for people. And Kenya's Nuclear Power and Energy Agency has also dismissed claims by locals and environmentalists that the proposed nuclear power plant will cause any harm in the area. The authorities say that the construction would not begin for years and that the environmental laws were under consideration. Will the government be able to pacify its citizens and address their concerns? Or will it be forced once again to bow to their demands and alter its plans for the nuclear power plant? Now, to talk more on this, we have with us Sophia Rajab, who is a lawyer, joining us live from Kilifi County, the site of the proposed nuclear power plant in Kenya. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Sophia, what is the primary objection to the nuclear plant proposal, and what are your concerns regarding its impact on human and animal life in the area and the environment?
I think the first concern is the environment, because there are very, very credible resources that we have been reading and research that has been done insofar as the effect on the increase of temperature. We're talking about third generation nuclear reactors here, but rely on water for its cooling system. So in the span of the life of a nuclear power plant, we're talking 40 to 60 years, the temperature of the ocean will definitely go up. And we know that temperature is an important ecological parameter for aquatic life. So the fish will be dead, just to put it simply. And that creates an avalanche of issues that affect the environment, affect aquatic life, affect the entire ecosystem. I mean, the thing is this proposal, the proposed site is in the middle, it's smack in the middle of a UNESCO biosphere. As you said, from Arabuko Sokoke Forest to the Maida Creek to the Watamu Marine Park, which is actually a protected area. So you would wonder why the government, in its own protected area, would want to launch a nuclear power plant there. There's serious concerns with regard to the environment. And that, in turn, affects livelihoods because we rely on tourism as a big economic industry for us in the coast. And so if we lose the marine park, if we lose the corals, if we lose the mangroves, then we don't have an industry, and that will mean that people's livelihoods will be affected. The plant is proposed right across from the Watamu hotel strip, so tourism will be lost, and that's also another key issue that we have.
Yes, Sophia, on that, what are the key demands of the activists?
I think one key demand is for the government to halt any plans for this nuclear power plant. As you said, they are pushing with the 2027 date to start the plant, which is absolutely illogical. It doesn't make sense. We haven't done enough public participation. We haven't done enough public scrutiny of these documents that the government is signing. We know the government has signed several MOUs with different countries, with different nations, but those MOUs have not been available to the public. So we actually don't know what the government is signing. So the first thing is for the government to halt all and any of these agreements until there is public participation, until people are told what their plans are after they've evicted communities from the area, until we're told what the mitigation plans are. So far, the government has also not signed critical conventions: the Convention on Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage, the Convention on Compensation for Nuclear Damage, the Convention on Spent Fuel Management and Radioactive Waste. The government has not signed any of the critical conventions on nuclear energy. So you even wonder, how is it possible for the country to go forward with this project without having taken those steps?
And what are the social and the economic implications, you did touch on it earlier, of this nuclear plant for local communities? And why has there been such strong opposition from both environmental groups and the coastal residents?
This resistance has been going on for years. And every time there is opposition to this project by the locals, the government is not taking it seriously. As I said, if we lose the tourism industry, which is one of the biggest employers, then we've lost people's livelihoods. That means people cannot work, people cannot feed their families, people cannot pay rent, and you actually cannot live. So people's livelihoods will be lost. We're talking about the immediate employees of the hotel industry, but then also other secondary jobs, for example, fishermen, touring companies, like everybody in that community will essentially have lost their job and their main means of livelihoods. And that's a problem for us, because even as you want to evict this community from that area, where are they going to go? What jobs are they going to do? The government is telling us that this nuclear power plant is going to create 2,000 jobs. But which 2,000 jobs? Those 2,000 jobs are going to essentially eliminate thousands more jobs of people who are actually employed. And even within those 2,000 jobs, those are the jobs within the nuclear industry that we don't have the capacity to actually occupy. So it's a fallacy to think that you're going to create 2,000 jobs that we actually are not qualified for, because not many people, because of historical injustices against this community, have not got an education, have not been able to access these opportunities. So those 2,000 jobs are not for the local community. They're going to be for other people who are not local. So that's why we're resisting, because we're not being told really what the specific plans with regard to eviction, location, job security. And another thing that is very important is nuclear safety. We've talked about the issue of the lack of preparedness as well that Kenya has in terms of being able to deal with a nuclear fallout. Our government cannot even handle emergencies from floods. How can we handle a nuclear emergency? And again, we are in the Kenyan coast. And if you look at our history in the Kenyan coast, we also have problems of security. So the issue of nuclear proliferation is another issue that we need to talk about, and that the government hasn't really explained to us how they're going to ensure that their mitigation measures to no nuclear proliferation because we have terrorism.
Right.
We've had terrorist attacks
Right.
before. And so there's uranium.
Yes, Sophia, yes.
Yes, that's really going to affect the security of the people around this area. So we have very, very big problems with the pace in which the government is going
Right,
without
Sophia.
ensuring that the blocks are taken care of and addressed.
Mm. Yes. And has the government proposed any measures to ensure safety and sustainability of the nuclear plant, particularly in light of potential natural disasters like floods, as an example?
Right, and I'd remind you, Alyson, and maybe many of your viewers might not know this or remember this, is that we faced that tsunami here in the coast 20 years ago, right? Which had devastating effects that lasted very long. So if we compare ourselves with Japan and the accident that happened in their nuclear power plant, we will have no means whatsoever, and I can say that with no fear or favor, that our county, Kilifi County, and by extension, the Kenyan government does not have the capacity to handle a nuclear accident, whether it is a minor accident or a major accident.
Yes.
We do not have the capacity. We do not have the know-how. We do not have the facilities to be able to manage a nuclear fallout. And before we get into establishing a nuclear plant, perhaps it's important for us to make sure that we can handle accidents. Right now, our hospitals don't even have medicine. You understand? So it's a tall order for the government to tell us we'll handle it when we get there. No, we don't want to handle it when we get there. We want to handle it now. And that is the demand that we're making of this government, is to halt everything until this project has undergone enough public scrutiny and all of our concerns are actually addressed.
Yeah. And Sophia, if not this project, how can Kenya align with global trends towards renewable energy?
We already have renewables in our energy mix. We have invested heavily in solar, in geothermal, in hydro, and in wind. We have made so many investments in renewables. And right now, the question really is, why not invest more in renewable energy? And we already have that in place, than to take the more expensive option of nuclear energy. It really doesn't make sense. And at the expense of people, at the expense of the environment, at the expense of livelihoods. So that is what we're calling on the government, to make more investments in renewables rather than to take this more expensive route of nuclear energy.
Right. Sophia, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa. Very grateful for your insights and opinions and suggestions there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And now we should focus to Sudan, where the capital city of Khartoum is once again at the center of intense fighting between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary RSF. At least 23 people were killed and over 40 were injured in Khartoum as the Sudanese army launched a renewed offensive. Khartoum has been under the control of the Rapid Support Forces, but in the last 1 week, the Sudanese army has been gaining ground. The Sudanese army launched airstrikes that hit a busy market in the capital city. Khartoum's central market, which was attacked, is near one of the main camps that's occupied by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Using a fierce battle also took place on the ground, with the residential areas being targeted, and the victims of the latest round of fighting include traders, shoppers, and local residents. Videos have also emerged of clashes between the army and the RSF near a mosque in central Khartoum. Now, according to reports, the army is advancing towards Khartoum from nearby Omdurman city, which is in its control. Sudan's army-backed government is currently based in Port Sudan on the Red Sea coast. The RSF has meanwhile taken control of the capital and also key areas in the rest of Sudan. Now, last week, the army launched its biggest offensive in months to retake Khartoum. And as per reports, in its week-long offensive so far, the army has been able to recapture several areas, effectively isolating the RSF. While the hostilities between the two sides continues on the ground, the war has taken a global dimension, with many foreign powers involved in the conflict. Several nations have been reportedly arming the rival sides, which in turn has prolonged the conflict. These include Iran, the UAE, Russia, China, Turkey, Serbia, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Egypt. The RSF has made repeated claims accusing Iran for backing the Sudanese army, while the army claims that the United Arab Emirates has been aiding the RSF with weapons. Earlier this week, the Sudanese government presented the UN Security Council with what it called new evidence that the UAE is arming and supporting the RSF. It said in a letter that the Sudanese army found boxes of UAE-supplied ammunition and medicines as they cleared an area previously under the control of the paramilitary in southeast Sudan. Sudan further accused the UAE of recruiting mercenaries from various countries to fight alongside the RSF and provide them with financial, logistical, and diplomatic support. The Sudanese army called on the UN Security Council to condemn the UAE and take action against the Gulf state. The UAE has been denying these allegations. Sudan has been reeling under a brutal civil war since April of last year. The power struggle between the Sudan army and the paramilitary erupted in April of 2023. Both sides have been vying for power and control over territory. The World Health Organization says at least 20,000 people have been killed in the war, but some estimates put the toll much higher at up to 150,000. As per the UN, the war has also created the world's largest displacement crisis. More than 10 million people, around a fifth of Sudan's population, have been forced from their homes. Humanitarian efforts have been little success in providing relief to civilians, while the Sudan war becomes the center for a global power play. It's the people of Sudan who continue to face the brunt of the brutal rivalry. And for our next story, let's shift focus to the River Nile. Planet Earth's longest river, the Nile is a major freshwater source for multiple African nations. It is also a key economic driver supporting agriculture and fishing. But the river is also a point of contention in Africa and has created a rift among a few countries. On Sunday, a key agreement came into force to promote and coordinate cooperation on the matter of the Nile governance. It is called the Nile Basin Cooperative Framework Agreement, or the CFA. It is the first multilateral effort by the Nile Basin states to create a legal and institutional framework to govern the use and management of the river. It sets up the Nile River Basin Commission, an institutional body to look after the task. While most of the Nile Basin states approved the agreement, some refused. The agreement was signed by the upstream countries, including Ethiopia, Rwanda, South Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. But it was refused by the downstream countries, Egypt and Sudan. Both the nations, while rejecting the agreement, said that they have consistently sought to establish a consensual, all-inclusive mechanism for collaboration among the Nile Basin states. They emphasize that the Six-State Commission cannot, under any circumstances, be considered representative of the Nile Basin as a whole. The Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, in an event in Cairo, said that preserving Egypt's water resources is an existential issue. Despite the opposition, the agreement came into force. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed called on the non-signatory states to join the effort. He called the CFA agreement as the Nile family, which encourages regional cooperation for the equitable use of the river's resources. However, an Ethiopian project on the river is currently at the heart of the tensions over the River Nile. Ethiopia has been constructing a giant dam on the Nile. It is called the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. It is the largest hydropower project in Africa. The project, which began in 2011, is now nearing completion. Ethiopia views the dam as essential for its economic development. It wants the dam to produce electricity for the majority of the population, which do not have a power supply. But Egypt and Sudan, which lie downstream of the river, say that the project can threaten their water supplies. Egypt, which depends on the Nile for approximately 97% of its drinking water and irrigation supplies, says that the dam would jeopardize food and water security and livelihoods of ordinary Egyptian citizens. Sudan, too, is concerned that if Ethiopia were to gain control over the river, it would affect the water levels that Sudan receives. Now, the dispute over the dam has particularly escalated tensions between Egypt and Ethiopia. Cairo has sided with Ethiopia's rival Somalia over a dispute over the port deal with Somaliland. Earlier this year, Addis Ababa signed a deal with Somalia's breakaway region to gain access to its port, and the deal triggered tensions with Somalia. Cairo has since then provided weapons to Mogadishu and has also offered troops that can replace the Ethiopian soldiers fighting terrorism in Somalia. But the latest details and deal on the Nile River without Egypt's consideration could further trigger tensions between the two countries. Now, can African nations stop their lifeline, the River Nile, from turning into a reason for rivalry? Our final story today is from South Africa, where a controversy has erupted over R&B superstar Chris Brown's upcoming concert in Johannesburg. The Grammy winner is scheduled to perform in the largest stadium in Africa with over 94,000 seats. He managed to sell out all tickets in less than 2 hours. But now, some in South Africa want the concert cancelled. Activists say that Chris Brown's concert sends out a harmful message in a country grappling with high rates of gender-based violence. Given the artist's history of domestic violence, particularly his infamous 2009 assault on singer Rihanna. Activists fighting for the rights of women and children in South Africa have launched a petition to scrap the concert. Our next report gets you the details.
South Africa's reputation for extreme violence against women is once again in the spotlight. But this time it's not because of a new government policy or a new statistic. Instead, it's because of an upcoming concert. Chris Brown, the Grammy Award-winning R&B superstar, is all set to perform in South Africa's Johannesburg city in December. The show tickets sold out in just 2 hours, after which the organizers had to add another show. But the excitement surrounding his arrival is colliding head-on with a powerful backlash, as activists and concerned citizens question the message that his presence sends in a country that's grappling with one of the world's highest rates of gender-based violence. According to reports, in roughly every 12 minutes, a rape is reported in the country. Despite the overwhelming demand for tickets, Brown's history of domestic abuse, particularly his infamous 2009 assault on singer Rihanna, has reignited heated debates about accountability, celebrity, and the perpetuation of harmful attitudes towards women. Activists fighting for the rights of women and children in South Africa have launched petitions to prevent Brown from performing. One such petition has over 20,000 signatures so far. The activists have a clear stance in this case. Allowing Brown, a man with documented history of violence against women, to perform in a country reeling from gender-based violence crisis sends a message that fame and fortune can overshadow accountability. 19-year-old Chris Brown in 2009 pleaded guilty to assaulting Rihanna. He was then sentenced to 5 years of probation, community service, and domestic violence counseling. Rihanna later forgave him, but this is not it. In February 2012, Brown snatched the phone of a woman in Miami who tried taking his picture. He was accused of 1 count of robbery. In June 2013, a woman in Los Angeles Orange County accused Brown of shoving her to the ground. In September 2015, a third-degree assault case was filed against Brown by a woman in Colorado. He allegedly forcibly ejected a woman from his bus after she refused to give him her phone. In January 2016, a woman in a Las Vegas club accused Brown of punching her in the face. She was trying to take a picture with the singer during a private party. As per South African law, people who have a previous conviction might not get a visa to the country. However, exceptions have been made. Activists say that the visa given to Brown is concerning and indicative of a systemic failure. Previously, Brown was banned from entering countries like the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. However, there are many fans, especially women, who remain undeterred by Brown's past. Social media is flooded with messages of enthusiasm. Some fans even joked about taking out loans to afford a meet and greet with him. This just highlights the intense loyalty and adoration Brown commands. In a country where femicide has become tragically routine, this fight goes beyond one man's performance. It's about changing the narrative, where abusers are held accountable, where violence against women is never excused, overlooked, and forgotten. This clash might not end gender-based violence in South Africa, but it's part of the larger battle to reshape how society views and tolerates violence against women.
And that's it on the show for